Hi, and welcome back to my channel. This is going to be a very difficult book review video for me to do because the content of this book that I'm about to talk about was much deeper than I've ever read in any historical fiction books thus far. Now, I have read several historical fiction books about spies, and to my recollection, the historical fiction books about spies that I have read have been women who infiltrated and were able to play their part. This is a different story. This is The Last of the Seven by Stephen Hartov. And if you look closely at that cover, you see 7 parachutes. Well, we have one soldier that survived, and his name was Froelich. And I could be mispronouncing it, but that was his name. Now, I want to tell you my connection to this book. I got it for a blog tour, and I got it as an electronic galley for my Kindle. However, because it was released on August the 9th, I checked my library and I was able to get it from Hoopla and listen to it. It was a narrator that I had never listened to before, and it was a very kind of almost a clinical read. So clinical, in fact, that I got to 60% and realized that I had no idea what was going on in the story. So I didn't want to give up with it because I know that it's a good story, because it is a historical fiction book based on true events. More than that, it's based on meticulous research so that as much of this story parallels to what actually happened was being done. And I knew that, and I really respect the author Stephen Hartov for putting in this much work for a book of this nature. So what I did is I went back to the very beginning and I listened to it again, and I got so much more out of it the second time around. One of the reasons I got more out of it the second time around is because certain things were quickly coming back to mind. Oh yes, I remember that. Oh yes, I remember her. Oh yes, I remember when he said that, or when he did this, or this was being blamed on him. But now I felt more involved than I did the first time around. It's very, very, very rare for me to do it, but when I feel like, okay, let's look at it like a heavy meal, like a full course meal, several courses. Somebody like me who has esophageal issues and my appetite has gotten very, very small. So if I were to eat a multiple courses, I would get full too fast, and then I wouldn't be able to enjoy the whole meal. That's the way that I was looking at this book. I knew that it was a very nutritious book in the sense of knowledge that I needed to put up here. I needed it. I just wanted it. And that's the way that I am. By the way, if I didn't say this already, I'm about to do a whip and chat video, so that's why those wires are there. So let's talk about this book. You have a single soldier, but you look at the book cover, which I have up on the screen, and you see 7 parachutes. Well, when those soldiers came down, they were part of the X troop, and only one of them survived. And that's why this book is called The Last of the Seven. Now, yes, I am definitely going to be looking at my iPad and my Kindle because I don't want to get any of these facts incorrect. Now, this soldier lands in the middle of the African desert, the North African desert, and he is accosted by 2 British soldiers. Now, he's wearing a German uniform. And when they speak to him, or he speaks back to them, he's speaking in fluent German. Therefore, he must be a German, and therefore he will very well become one of their prisoners. If not, they'll take his life. Now, he has to convince them of something. He is part of an undercover operation, and his job was to infiltrate a Nazi base. Now, a little bit about our soldier Froelich is he was blonde and blue-eyed, and he fit right into that role of undercover based on his looks. Okay. Now, as mentioned, he stumbles into this camp, and now he has to prove who he is. And I loved the way that he proved who he was. Like, for example, he kept saying, I am not German. I am not a German. I am not a German. They didn't believe him. And as I started to question him, he would answer the questions to a point and then he would stop. Because remember, he was spying. And it was no doubt a matter of whether or not he could trust the people or the men, soldiers, the British soldiers that were talking to him. Then someone comes in and he asks him a very specific question about, do you have a taste for such and such? And he said, no, I don't like that. I prefer such and such. When he answered the question in that manner, they knew that he was who he said he was. Although he didn't clearly say who he was, they knew at least one thing. He was not a German. That's how our book began. Now, at the point in history when this young Lieutenant Froelich is in this situation, the Allies have advanced into Europe and they're trying to stop the Germans. That's what's going on, is this spy system, this X troop. And there were other names, SIG. I should know what SIG. Let's look this up. So not only do we have the X troop, we have the SIG, which is the Special Investigations Group. We have Special Operations, Executive and Combined Operations. Various factors, if that's the right word, but various factions maybe, in order to try to stop the Germans. Now, after they recognize that he is not a German, Froelich is not a German, he has to recover. So he's injured so badly that they think that they may have to take his leg. So he spends his time recovering and knowing that he's going to eventually get back out there, even possibly on the front line. Now, the story is solely focused on him and his job and how he manages to survive even the situation with his leg. And by the way, I was saying his name is Froelich, Froelich. I might be pronouncing it incorrectly. But what was interesting about this book is if we go to the end of the book, the very end, which I do this on every read that's possible, okay? Because the book ends with like an afterword or an epilogue in 1944. So there is an ending for Froelich that is something that doesn't leave us without hope. I just put it like that. But when you get to the very end of the book, you're going to get the author notes. And by getting to these author notes, which has taken me forever to get there, by getting to these author notes, you realize the meticulous research that our author, Stephen Hartov, is it Hartov? Yes, Stephen Hartov did to compose this book. Now, it starts off with historical notes, and it talks about the SIG, Special Interrogation Group, and it tells us who it was comprised of: Jewish Germans, Jewish Germans, Austrians, French, other European volunteers. And then how those very special group of people that were part of the SIG were designated as the X Troop. The last of the X Troop was Froelich. And then we have certain examples in the historical notes in this book by Stephen Hartov that compare true historical events based against the way he wrote things in this book. And very, very specific events, very, very well worth to read. And then we learn about how, well, I won't say we learn about, but we know what happened, how World War II ended. And we see the role that these various soldiers played in that. Now, there's also kind of a love story here because he's a human being. These soldiers, these spies, these agents, they were human just like we're human. So there was a lot of sensitivity in there because Their jobs were so difficult that there was even a point in this book where someone did give up. Okay? Did Froelich ever give up? If he didn't give up, what kept him going? And I'm telling you, this book was really good. Was it worth it, my time, to pick up this book from 60% and go back and read it to the beginning? Yes, because I wanted to listen to this as an audio book while following along on my Kindle. Okay? I never do that. But I did that with this book because I felt that this World War II history about this commando troop was something that I needed to know, because history was indeed my favorite. Algebra was my favorite subject, but I loved history when I was in school. And I loved being able to read a fictional novel that's based on actual portrayal of events. And that's what this book does. Our soldier Bernard Froelich, he basically could have lost his life over and over again, but he was a survivor, and that's what this book tells us about. And it also tells us about these various entities that made up the spy systems that worked to defeat the Germans. Really, really good book. It was a slow start. It did take a lot for me to latch on, so I would say if you're going to read this book, carve out some time. And another thing about a book like this is a book that if you're as interested in history as I am, don't expect this book to be a one and done. You know, you sit there and read it from cover to cover. Take some time to absorb the book. And that's what I did. When I went back to the beginning, I read along with my Kindle, and then I took a break, and then I went back. And I did that over the course of 3 sittings in less than 9 hours. Yes, I read fast. I know that. But I still took breaks so I could absorb Bernard Froelich's story. So I'm sorry if this video review is more complicated than most. If this content of this type of book, this historical fiction, is too much, but there are lovers of historical fiction out there. And when you have an author that does such extensive research and can parallel the events that are in the book with real historical events that happened and do it in a way that makes it a readable novel, then I say go for it. So thank you for watching. I'm sorry I feel extremely fatigued. I'm looking at myself and I can see it too, but it doesn't mean I didn't appreciate this book, because I most definitely did. So thank you very much for watching. Bye-bye.